Hello everyone, so welcome to the next version of Donation. So in this version we're bringing in Google Authentication and we're bringing in cloud storage, and the way we're going to demonstrate the cloud storage is the ability for the user to change their profile pic when they sign in. Now if they happen to sign in with Google, which is what we'll kind of run through in this version, we're only changing the profile pic on the app. We're not actually changing the user's Google profile pic, because that's a whole other kind of set of steps we'd have to go through. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if you look at our console over here, or this is my console, should I say, sorry. Okay, I have a couple of that I've been testing with. So there's my own one, there's tester again. So I've been testing with those. So what we'll do is I'll kind of run through a scenario where the user is going to sign in with Google for the first time. So they're not part of our system. They haven't made any donations. So we can just see that the slight changes made to our console, and just follow through when they make a donation, where the photo gets stored and so forth. Okay. So if we go over to our left hand side here, so if we sign in with Google, click on our sign in with Google button. So what you're presented with are all the existing accounts that are on that particular device. So I would have already set up these two. Okay, so this is the new one I've just set up as my daughter Ella. So what we'll do is kind of, if this is the first time you're running this, you would choose add another account, so it would be empty. And what you'll be taken through then is the kind of the process to verify your you'll be asked to enter your Gmail, and then you verify that against the Google servers, and then you will automatically be logged in. Okay, so I'm just going to stick with Ella for the moment here, who I have just gone through that process, set up as a new account on the device. So now I'm going to select Ella. So I'm taking in, and there we go. So as you can see, there's no donations, but if we toggle, we should see the existing, which we do. So there's ones that are the donations existing already. So we'll just go back to Ella's one, just to confirm on our nav bar. So we have, there's the profile pic, there's her display name, and there's her email. Okay, so what we can do is just make a couple of donations. Actually, sorry, just to go back over to our console, I just refresh my console, and there now is our new user Ella, just after being added. Okay, so now if we go back, as I said, we look at our database. So again, similar features as before. We're just bringing in that extra usage of storage and working with photos, similar to what we would have covered in Placemark. Okay, so if we go back over here, back to our app, we'll just make a donation. So we'll donate. See that they're flashing up on the console. Do another one. Leave it at 100 there. Donate again. So there's our total, and there's it going up. And now if we go back to our report, so there's Ella's donations, and then if we toggle, then we see all the donations. Okay, so we just go back to Ella's as well. Okay, so now in terms of changing the profile pic, so this is where the kind of the storage comes in. Okay, so what we can do is we can click on the image, and we're taken to our UI picker. Again, now I need to go back to my downloads. I think I have them in downloads. Yeah, okay. So if we want here, look, we can pick this one. Actually, we'll pick this one instead. So there you can see it's changed, Ella. Okay. And more importantly, if we go back to our report, you can see that the image has also changed there as well. Because obviously, if this in a kind of a what the user would expect is if they change their profile pic within the app, any references to that profile pic has also changed. So there's quite a lot going on behind the scenes. Okay, so if we go back over to just to look at our storage, just to look at the structure of our storage. So what we have is we have our photos folder, and within that, again, this is just my own approach. You could take a different approach in terms of the folder you want to set up. You could even in theory, I suppose, have a separate folder for every user, but just for our particular example, I felt this is kind of straightforward enough. So if we click on some of these photos, so that's the default one, and we see where there's our the UID, or the unique identifier for that particular photograph. Okay, that image, sorry. So that's what ties back to our application. So if we were to look at go back to our database and find, this could be a little test now. Let me see. Where's our lease? Our there's just Ella. So that's the one we just set up. So you can see down here in our profile pic, this is the extra property, the extra field we're using to keep track of that image, so that if the issue that we need to be aware of is that when an image is stored in Firebase, it's given that unique ID. If we go and add or change a new one, it gets a separate ID. So we would need to actually, just as a test, if I leave this open for you, right, we can go into, if I go back to our Ella, if I change the image again, pick a different one there, here we just pick this one. You see it all changing in the console. So we've run through and we've updated all references to that particular image. Okay, so that when we go back to our report, there's the image also changed again, which is what the user would expect. Okay, I run through that in a bit more detail in the code walkthrough. But if you want to just briefly take a look at the code, or some of the code anyway, in the project. So we go back to our version of donation at the moment. One point to note, actually, just leave this open. I mentioned this in the lab as well, so just expand this. Okay, even though this is showing up as an error and I can't find this, okay, this is within our configure Google sign-in. So this is kind of just the going through the Google authentication process. This particular resource is default _web _client ID. This only gets generated after the application is built and then run. So at pre-build time, it doesn't exist, but you can't. The application will still build, it will still run, and then will actually correctly allow the user to authenticate, as we've seen in the demo. Again, possibly just a small little bug that's within Android Studio for the moment and this whole process. So if you were to go in and look at your build folders, you will find a values folder inside that, and inside that you'll find the strings, and inside that you'll find a reference to your web _client _ ID. Okay, strange one at the moment, but look, maybe it'll be fixed. But at the moment, don't worry about it. If that's showing up as an error, that's the reason why. Okay, so if we go back to, actually, sorry, we're in there, so we can, so to kind of briefly look at while we're there, I guess, the Google authentication kind of code we've brought in. So the function there, just setting up the sign-in options. At the moment, I'm just working off the basic email, right? You could request other sign-in options, like access to a calendar, like access to Google Drive, possibly. So this is where, if you wanted to add in extra stuff, that's where you would put it. The only other bits are, like here, other sections are Firebase Auth with Google, I'm calling it. Now the thing is, most of this I've taken from the official developer docs and just modified it, refactored it to suit the MVVM approach. Okay, so the code snippets and the examples you would find and that I would kind of refer to aren't tied to that pattern. So using view models and live data isn't part of that. So there was some changes we needed to make, which I would take you through also in the lab. So there's not a huge amount that we add in our Firebase Auth Manager. Okay, so in terms of just bringing in the extra Google authentication, the same, there's our login or register as before, just doing some extra checks there. So when we initially create our instance, there's our configuring our Google sign and those particular options, and then running through what we want to authenticate against, which at the moment we're just setting up and just that basic email. Okay, there's a bit more work done inside the DB manager. So I can just open that up for a second. So in terms of retrieving data and updating, so there's an extra function we bring in. So here we are updating the image reference, as you saw there in the demo, that when we change a profile pic, we need to run through and update each reference to it. So that's within both collections, both in all the donations and then in the specific users' donations. Again, tied back to the approach we're taking, but you can see it here. I'm just kind of binding to the two separate users and all donations, and then running through a snapshot on the data change. Okay. And grabbing the individual donation there and then updating internally. This is with the specific user donations, and then we can actually leverage that with all donations because we know what particular UID we want and particular donation we want to change inside that for each loop. So we're kind of trying to optimize our multiple updates there between the different collections. Okay. If we go back to our we have a new Firebase image manager. Again, try to follow the same kind of approach we've taken with the others. Again, there's a nice bit going on here. I kind of go through in a little bit more detail in the code walkthrough. But essentially, there's a number of things we need to check. Number one, when the user logs in, does the image already exist? So we need to grab that image and then kind of pull that down and update it accordingly. If it doesn't exist, do we need to add it to our storage because it's the first time the user's logging in, or do we just need to retrieve it and then display it? And then if the user is changing their profile pic, there's all that extra work we need to do where we run through the different collections and update that particular reference. So even though it looks straightforward enough from the user's perspective, and all they're doing is changing a photograph, an image, there's quite a lot going on behind the scenes just to ensure the consistency across both the user's profile pic and then any donations that the user has made. Okay. But like I say, kind of run through it in more detail in the code walkthrough. Okay. So other than that, I think there's not much more to talk about. The approach we take with the user changing, I'll go back to our app again for a second, when they select the image is very similar to what we would have covered and you would have covered in previous examples, that place mark example. So you would be seeing a lot of similar code. It's just in this particular example we're obviously applying the MVVM pattern, so we're working with view models and live data, so there's a little bit extra we need to do, but essentially we still get the same result. User gets to click on a photo using the SAF, the UI picker, to change that photo, and then we just update that back in the cloud to reflect what changes have been made. Okay. Look, if there's any other questions on it, any issues you run into in the lab, you can get me on Slack. And hope you've found it a little bit interesting. And we're kind of, you can see yourself, it's getting quite complex now, and we've a couple of more features just to bring in. But as I said, we're nearly done with this with our donation. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and goodbye.